he's your third best midfielder, you have the best midfield trio in the league.
Let's talk about the Suns. We're going to go a little bit lighter now. They've been a bit off Broadway to start the year. They obviously were supposed to have that opening round match against the Bombers that got washed out because of the cyclone. Then they had that, so they postponed game. Then they were 6 p.m. East Coast time over on the West Coast against West Coast. And still haven't played a home game, can you believe? So we will get to about April, what would it be? April 4, I think, before they even play a home game after they were supposed to be a showpiece event in the opening round.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it?
But they're fit and firing early in the season. A couple of big road wins, as I said, which, Jake, was the big knock on this team last year.
So they won their last 2 on the road at the end of last season, if my memory serves me correctly.
Richmond at the G and North.
Yeah, I don't think it were 2 finalists or premiership contenders, but they won 2 nevertheless, and I think that must have given them some confidence into the off-season. We can do this. We are good enough to do this. If any team that can put together the record they had at home should be able to win games on the road. And granted, it's an incredibly small sample size, but you have to like what you're seeing early. And every year we always sort of say, is this the year for Gold Coast? Is this the year? I don't know. Do you? I don't know. Is it? But do you feel as confident after 8 quarters of the Suns this season than in any other season? Are you more confident after 2 games than in any other season?
Very early doors, as you say. But, Christian, we've talked about the Premiership standards on this podcast before. Perhaps we can run through those, just a refresher for those who are either joining us for the first time this year or want a refresher on the Premiership standards. And then we can talk about whether the Suns, are kind of in that zone.
Yeah, so Premiership standards, 32 key stats. And sort of the spreadsheet that we use shows you where each of the premiers have sort of, whether they've ranked in the top 6 of each stat. So you can look at points for the last 10 premiers, 8 of the last 10 have been in the top 6 for points for. Whereas 100% or all 10 of them have been in the top 6 for points against. So just taking those 2 stats, you can see points against is probably a little bit more relevant to winning a premiership than points for. So yeah, as I said, 32 stats. You don't need to be number 1 in all of them, but we do know there's key areas of the game where, as I said, points against is a big one. Gold Coast number 1 so far for the year. Another one that's been all 10 premiers have ranked top 6 in is points against from turnover. So you losing the ball and having it kicked over your head for a score. They're number 1 in that. So they've conceded
they're defending turnover well.
Yeah, conceded the fewest points from turnover. You look at head-to-head turnover differential versus you and your opposition. So you score points from the turnover and the opposition does. Who scores more? 9 out of the last 10 premiers have been in the top 6 for that. Gold Coast are number 1. So this is all including round 0 to 3. So they've only played 2 games. Some teams have played 4. Some teams have played 3. Yeah. So to go back to your point, number 1 contest possession differential, number 1 clearance differential as well. Second best team at moving the ball into N. So to go back to your point, after 8 quarters, yes, I'm looking at Gold Coast in a brand new light, but I sort of reserve the right to sort of make judgments. So we've seen about 16 quarters. We always use about 4 games minimum before you can sort of make some sweeping statements.
I think that's fair.
But for the first 2 games, as I said, you've got to like everything you see, and you can only beat who's been put in front of you.
Yeah.
So the 87-point win against West Coast in round 1, that was a club record. That's the biggest margin they've ever won any game by. And then they come to the MCG last week against Melbourne, beat them by 58 points. That's their second biggest win at the G. They beat Melbourne in 2013 when Melbourne were anchored to the bottom of the ladder by about 60 points. So you look at those 2 results, yes, those 2 teams aren't as strong as, West Coast, we know where they're at. Melbourne are starting to really struggle this year. But Gold Coast have put them both away quite convincingly. Their percentage of 230.6 is the highest ever at this point of the season. So again, looking at them and trying to get to this point of the season, it's they've played 2 games and it's starting of round 4. So do we look after 3 games or is it after 4? Some teams have played 4. So it's quite hard, but they've never been sort of this far ahead of their opposition after 2 rounds. So number 1 rated player in the competition at the moment, Matt Rao. Second rated player in the competition this year, Noah Anderson. So they've got the 2 best midfielders. And another one I just want to throw out there, 9th rated this year, Ben Long. Just seems to be this year's Calamachi for me. I know Calamachi wasn't a huge rating player last year, but just his job in Brisbane's forward line, I feel like it's very similar to Ben Long. We need you to kick goals. We need you to be an aerial presence, but we need you to be at ground level. We need you to be a pest and tackle and pressure. He's doing all those things. So he's 9th. Ben King's flying along quite nicely. So Sam Collins we know is elite defender. So they're starting to get elite players on all lines. But as I said, having Rowell and Anderson doing what they're doing in the midfield at the moment, they have to be the real deal.
What would it take for you to believe?
kind of like Christian said, to a bigger sample size. Really, I think that's fair. I don't think anyone. They could have beaten West Coast by 200 points. I don't think anyone's going to come and say the next day that they're going to win the Premiership or they are even a contender, a legitimate contender. But if we see them, they don't need to win by 10 goals every week. But if they can maintain that dominance at home, and it can translate on the road. They don't have to win every game. They can have the odd game where they don't play well, but they can't have months where they don't play well. They can't have 3 good games and then just awful for a stretch. They've got to find consistency. And if they can do that, who is to say that they can't? What reason do you have? You just said they've got elite players on every line. The one player you didn't even mention was Tuke Miller. Like if he's your third best midfielder, you have the best midfield trio in the league. I'm pretty confident saying that. So I think they do have the best midfield trio at the moment, and they're all such different players. They all complement each other in different ways, and they're in a good position now. A massive game this week against the Crows.
And you talk about their ability defensively so far this year. This is going to be one of the biggest tests that they have. Yeah,
the number 1 scoring team coming up there to visit them. So. Yeah, last year I know when they played it was smashed down rain and it was one of the horrible games. Hopefully we've got clean, nice conditions and we'll get a real good reading on where these two teams are at.